short amount of time, in case there is a large surplus or a very large shortfall,
Yeah.
to come up with ideas and suggestions and cuts or additions and things like
Yeah.
that.
I mean, from past experience, generally, if we get a budget number, we work within it. I mean, we're pretty
Yeah,
good
no, I know. I
at
just
staying within the
wanted to-
budget, and not have to make any drastic changes during the course of the year. But that's a good idea, Mike, and I think we can do that.
Excuse me.
And over the next couple of meetings, I will be coming back to you and sharing some of the changes
Yeah.
that will be taking place over the next couple of weeks. It's still a fluid process, but tonight we vote the bottom line.
Actually, I think to Michael's point, you said 77,000 going into
Small cap.
Small cap. But couldn't you apply that to some of your plan in terms of need for technology, staff?
You're reading my mind.
think that's what Mike's
I'm coming
suggesting,
back
too.
and going to be talking to you about
Yeah.
over the next couple of meetings.
So it might not go to small cap is what I'm,
Right now, it's going to small cap, but it may go elsewhere.
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, are we considering finding the money for the science program and the additional books in that small cap piece?
I would like to be able to come back to you,
Okay, yeah,
starting
yeah,
at the
okay,
next
that's fine. I
meeting
get it.
and share
Okay.
this with you.
Right now, the bottom line is the bottom line.
Yeah.
We want to vote the bottom line, because on May 7th, next Monday, the Board of Selectmen will be voting the overall budget, which will include our budget, to go on to the town warrant for town meeting in June. So
Are we ready
So,
for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the amount of $25,169,692 for the fiscal year 2013 school district budget.
Thank you, Karen. We have a motion from Karen.
Second.
We have a second from Cliff. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.
Great, that's done. Policy manual review. Okay, we have a second reading. The review of section F of the policy manual. And I don't think there were any changes made, but we want to vote on this so that we can reflect that a review was done.
well,
And-
there were, one of the issues was that people who are at least receiving this on the iPad, we were unable to see all the changes that were made.
Right.
So I got a hard copy, and now I have questions.
What, on section F, did we make any changes in section?
Oh,
No, I'm
section
talking,
F. Oh, I thought
we'll
you
get to
were
that in a
talking
minute,
about
Mel.
student behavior.
We'll get to that in a
Okay.
minute. But I think section F, these next two, I think there were no changes recommended by the policy committee, but they were reviewed. We want to reflect that it was reviewed, so I'm going to ask for a vote on second reading on section F of the policy manual. And the vote would be to acknowledge a review of section F.
I'll move to acknowledge a review was completed of section F of the policy manual.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion by Mel and a second by Karen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, none. Motion carries by a vote of 5-0. Committee also approved on first reading a review of section H of the policy manual. And again, there were no changes, but we do want to take a vote to acknowledge a review of section F of the policy manual. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to acknowledge the review of section H of the policy manual.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Mel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now, we did have a first reading, which was not approved at the last meeting, and that was the revised policy for JCR, which is student behavior, and the regulations which go along with that. And again, I know there were some issues, and there were some questions. I looked at it myself. Anybody comments? Mel, I think you said you wanted to comment on that?
I just had some questions on page 2. They start on page 2 under disciplinary due process.
Okay, page 2. Yes.
It starts with short-term disciplinary sanctions, except where circumstances require the student's immediate removal from the school environment. So I'm fine with that, but then under long-term, shouldn't it also say, except where circumstances require the student's immediate removal from the school environment? Shouldn't that be in both of those? If it's a long-term disciplinary sanction, shouldn't we have that first line in there? Because the way I read it is the kid could get a long-term disciplinary sanction, but he gets to stay in school until he appeals.
It says,
It says prior to the imposition of any disciplinary sanction that might result in the student's suspension for more than 10 days, or expulsion, the parents will be given written notice of a hearing at which they may, so
Oh, I see
all
what
this
you're
time,
saying.
the student can be in school based on the way this is written. Even if the student's committed something, done something in school that we want the student out of school for. That's the way I read it. So I had a concern about that. I thought that same clause, except where
I agree with you.
circumstances.
That first clause is probably something that ought to be in.
The
inserted.
long-term disciplinary
Yes.
sanctions as well.
Yes.
So.
I don't know if there was a reason why the attorney didn't put it in there.
I
Do you see what I'm
again,
saying?
I do see
Suspect
what you're
that it
saying. I
follows.
don't know. I spoke with him on Friday afternoon to get further clarification in anticipation of your questions, and that phrase didn't come up.
It may be, Mel, that it's just, it's inferred that on long-term disciplinary sanctions, you have that right, because it's saying up there, if it's something for 10 days or less, then normally there wouldn't be immediate removal, but under certain circumstances, there would. So it may be an inference that you don't have to put it in there because
But
they
I
have
just
the
think
right.
putting
I
it
agree.
in there
I agree. I
makes
agree.
it-
That's the only thing I can think of, though, is
Yeah,
that's
okay.
why they didn't do it.
Okay.
But I agree with that.
I can't imagine why that wouldn't be totally applicable.
Yeah.
In the second.
Well, I think it is applicable. I think they just didn't state it because it is applicable.
But maybe we should state it just
Yep.
to be.
Okay, do we
Then
have?
the
Ask
next-
for point of clarification.
Yeah.
It's starting, of course, with accept, all the way through environment. Is that
Right.
correct? Thank you.
Correct. Yeah.
The next section under appeals, we say the student shall have 10 days to appeal. Is it the student or the student and/or the student's
Where are you
parents?
looking, Mel?
The next under appeals, after
Yeah.
short-term display, long-term.
Yeah, it says parent guardian.
No, but then it says, where the student is excluded in accordance with blah, MGL, whatever, the student shall have 10 days from the effective date of the exclusion to file a written appeal. Should it say the student and/or the student's parents? Or is it the student
Well,
that's
I wanted to
required
go back to the first line. It says the parent guardian will have the right to appeal any decision. What about the student in the very first
Oh, okay, so
line?
the student should be added there,
Should that be
too.
included?
If they're emancipated.
Yeah, if they're 18. I mean, that's a very strong possibility. I mean, I'm guessing half the senior class is
Yes.
emancipated
Yes.
before they're not emancipated, but they're 18 before they graduate. So I just was thinking
Student.
parent,
So you add
guardian,
student in there, but then
Yeah.
the rest of the way, shouldn't it be the student, parent,
It
or guardian?
seems that it should be.
So take that clause and follow it through.
Yeah,
Right, I
and
think
include
that should be-
student in the first.
Right, wherever it says student can appeal, it should be
Parent.
parent, guardian, student.
Guardian, student. Thank you.
Then on the next, after appeals, it says, the principal shall have the authority to impose a suspension of 10 school days or less for violations of that almost sounds repetitive to me. We've already said that, haven't we? Under the disciplinary,
I'm sorry, the subheading, see at the bottom of that page under disciplinary due process?
okay,
That subheading, power to suspend.
oh, okay,
And so that's,
all right, I didn't see that, okay.
that's okay.
But that reads a little choppy to me. The principal shall have the authority to impose a suspension of 10 school days or less
There's a
for
word
violations
missing.
of the student behavior code or for repeated misconduct of an individual less severe nature.
There's something missing, missing there.
Of an individual.
Yeah, that's a good
The
point.
whole thing doesn't read right to me. I don't know.
It doesn't read right to me either. I
That
don't know,
paragraph
is
I think
it-
the individual.
I'm
Less
just reading.
severe in
Sounds right
nature?
to me.
is it less severe in nature?
Yeah, the principal shall have the authority to impose a suspension of 10 school days or less for violations of the behavior code or for repeated misconduct of an individual less severe nature that has created a substantial disruption of the educational process.
Oh, an individual, see, I don't read, an individual less severe, I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Is it less severe in,
See, I would say if that you're gonna, it would say repeated misconduct by an individual less severe in nature, that is, I don't know, it just doesn't read right to me. Do you get it, Karen? You're the resident.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
All right,
Trying to like,
I guess I'm just confused by the wording on that.
is it less severe in nature? Repeated misconduct of an individual that is less severe in nature? I don't,
I just need to hear it.
So the
out.
word individual, if that were taken out,
For repeated misconduct.
of a less severe nature.
oh, maybe that's it,
Yeah.
if you take
Of
out
a-
individual.
Say the
A
individual.
less severe
the less
nature that
severe
has created,
nature.
it. Yeah,
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 that's
that,
it.
in individual and has to
And
come out.
I don't know if individual has any significant legal,
Right.
I'm
inference.
missing it if it does, I mean, for
Okay.
repeated
Me too.
misconduct,
I will ask.
No, it's correct. It's correct.
yeah. go ahead.
Comma after individual. Of an individual less severe nature.
Less severe what?
What, I don't get that.
Less
What's the
severe
less severe
nature
nature
does-
defined?
It has to be less severe. If you're gonna put a comma after individual, it has to be less severe in nature.
I think individual's misplaced in
Yeah.
this
I agree
sentence.
with you.
It should
Of a
should
less
start
severe
out
nature
with
that has, yeah, I
10
agree.
days or less for violations of student
I agree.
behavior code by an individual or for repeated
I can get behind that.
misconduct.
So we
Of a
strike
Less severe
individual.
nature
If
that
you
is
strike
created.
individual and you say of a less severe nature.
Yeah.
Unless the lawyer says that individual has to be in there.
Repeated misconduct of a less
I guess
severe
it's always
nature.
a violation's obviously by an individual, isn't it?
Right.
Can you try to clarify that, Kat?
I will.
That's confusing to me.
Then I had, the next one, it says, it gives the 3 different reasons that the principal can suspend a student in excess of 10 days, expel a student, or long-term suspend a student. And in none of these does it have that, and then it says, a student shall be provided with due process prior to the imposition of any such long-term suspension. And again, in none of these does it say the student can be removed from the school immediately if necessary.
You see the heading is long-term suspension and expulsion.
Right.
Do you have to
Okay.
repeat that after we've already said it, though, Mel? or-
But see, that's what a lot of this seems repetitive to me, so I don't understand, we seem to be repeating things.
But I think that the removal is under disciplinary due
Right.
process, whereas this is long-term suspension and expulsion. So if you wanted to get rid of them, you could do it under the due process section.
Okay.
But this is just defining the actual suspension
I
as
get
to
it,
how
okay.
to suspend,
How
yeah.
to suspend.
And then one last question on that last one, it doesn't mention any due process on the long term. So the first 2, it says, a student shall be provided with due process prior to imposition. The last one doesn't say that.
I think it should be included, yeah.
I agree.
That's if they're charged with a felony.
Right, but doesn't the student have due process, or no?
They do with the process of the felony, right?
Right. I mean,
They've
this
already-
is if they're charged.
Right, so if they're charged with
They've
murder,
had their
due
due
process
process.
is due process.
But then the second one says that the principal has the right to permanently expel a student for violations involving the use or possession of a dangerous weapon, possession of a controlled substance.
Mm.
So I don't know if that has to
Well-
be added. I'm just asking.
Well, again, I think due process belongs there only because the principal still, it's not just the fact that he's been convicted of a felony, but in addition to that, there has to be determination made that the student's presence in school would have a
Right,
substantial detrimental
conviction of that
effect.
felony has an impact on the
Right,
student and the
so on
school.
that part of it
Right.
alone, even if there was no due process on the question of the felony,
Right,
the
that's not what
second
I'm
part of
looking
that
for,
would
right.
require some due process, I think, to make a determination as to whether or not there's a detrimental,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Effect.
That's what I'm getting at. That's why I thought the due process should be added on
Right.
that third one. But again, I would check with the attorney.
anyone else have concerns? Because if we can just check with the attorney on these concerns, I think we're close to getting it done.
So would we insert that sentence, the student shall be provided with due
Yeah.
process
That's what I'm
after,
suggesting. Yeah,
after school, after that first sentence?
Yeah, just as it is in the prior two.
Yeah, as it is
And
in
I
the
know
prior
what
two.
people are getting hung up on, if it's a felony and he's convicted, it's a felony, but that's not alone enough to
Right,
Expel.
expel.
yeah. So I would just check
But
with the,
Can you
comes
just
after
look at
school.
that second sentence, and I'm just asking.
No, it
if you
comes
could
after
look-
the last word, school.
I know, but then read the sentence after that. The principal shall further have the authority to permanently expel who has been found guilty of or who has admitted guilt in a court to a felony charge upon a finding that the student's presence would have a substantial detrimental effect.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay, so put due process in between those two
No,
sentences.
no, at the end,
At
right?
the end.
At the end.
at the
And-
end.
At the end,
The student shall be provided with due process prior to the imposition of an expulsion.
Thank you.
yeah, the other
I
school.
mean, a felony, if somebody stole something worth $251,
Right.
it's a felony. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you should be expelled from school. And if the principal did expel him from school without some type of due process, it would seem to be,
I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
all right. And I think what we'll do is if we can put those changes in, we'll come back
Next
and
week.
do the first reading.
Actually, can we approve a first reading with those edits?
I will
Well, do you
approve it.
want legal advice
Oh,
first
yeah,
on
that's
those?
right, we need
I
the
think
le-
we
yeah.
should get the legal advice on just the ones we made today, and I think we're very close to getting
And
that.
since we're gonna meet on the 14th and the 24th, we'll be able to get this
yeah.
done.
We can do it on the
So-
14th and 21st.
Will we have an opportunity to discuss during our first reading any other changes that we want to make that
Yeah.
aren't of a substance?
Yeah,
non-
first reading we can make.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
So May 14th, we'll bring it back
For
for a
first reading.
continued first reading.
Yeah.
And then we can